My name is Mina, and I'm going to tell you about what I typically use in a project to bring the loose ends together and solve conflicts. I didn't invent it. I don't know where it did come from, but I use it. It's called 80-20 rule. Probably all of you heard about it. Some of you use it. So the idea is you build a software, you build an app for 80% of occasions and scenarios. What drags you down, what becomes a scope creep, what becomes a financial drain, or however you call it, is that 20%. So as a software architect, as the leader, it's your responsibility to have a game plan for that 20%. It's your responsibility to, whenever you kind of feel it's coming, whenever you get a sense that people are getting stuck, and people can be your client, it can be your developers, it can be anybody. You should be able to immediately remember or remind them or find a way to kind of segue into the 80-20 rule. So if you build an app or a software for 80% of your users, that's already called a success. You always have a choice to release that piece to the public, get the feedback, and work harder to address some of those feedback for the 80% of the work, then focus, be dragged down into the 20%, or very rare scenarios that the clients just don't know how to handle it. It's very complicated in development to build. It requires lots of resources and so on and so forth. So I highly encourage you that as a leader of a project, as a startup founder, as a software architect, always try to understand who's the 80%, who's the 20%. If there is no 80-20, if it's 50-50, then I have bad news for you. This is a very complex system to build, and at the end of a project, nobody gonna be happy because it's almost impossible to address all the needs of stakeholders. It is doable. People build it. The tax type systems, it's a good example. I can't say 80% of the tax situation or tax calculation for people is simple. Probably is a lot more complex than that. So I consider that as a complicated app because it's very vague of who the 80% are. And also it's very hard to please people, because when you make one simple mistake, then that has financial consequences. Now, in the business of e-commerce that I happen to be involved with, and I happen to be designing apps, the 80-20 rule is sometimes easy to define. So 80% of the situation, people go add something to the cart and pay for it. From point A to B, it's very clear. But then there is a 20% of the situation for people with special pricing, people who want to do purchase order or invoices, some sort of a bundling of the products that's not typically common, but happens once in a blue moon. So when you start thinking about an e-commerce, if you get bogged down with those 20% of the scenarios, it's so uncommon. But then if you add them up together, they are 20%, and I can guarantee you can never deliver. Even if you deliver, this is not going to be an e-commerce to make a lot of money for clients, because the maintenance of those exceptions that you build, and the fact that there are exceptions to the exceptions and all that, is going to consume all your time and energy. And at the end, if there is an end, it's rarely a happy ending.